So I know you have, I mean, a personal family connection with your uncle that contributed to your interest, but could you walk us through the beginnings of when you actually contacted Anna and the Johnsons and sort of how you built trust?
Yeah, of course. So there was an article which I have to pay tribute to, which is beautifully written in the New York Times Magazine in 2015, which is now recirculating by a wonderful writer, Dan Engber. And I read it, and I had knew some people in the disability space as well who had been forwarding me things about the case. So it was kind of on my radar, but the article captured the layers, I think, in a way that the others hadn't. And I was completely transfixed and overcome with just that kind of a very rare feeling where you sort of say, I have to make this. It was just something I don't know if I've ever experienced it to that degree before. And I didn't even really think about what I was doing. I immediately just started reaching out to people. I wrote, Anna was still in the county jail. She was awaiting sentencing. She had been convicted. She was facing up to 40 years in prison at the time, and was not accessible by email. So her mother kind of, brought us together and gave me the address and sort of gave me her blessing. So I wrote, and I got to shoot the sentencing hearing. So that was strangely was the kind of end of the film, but the first thing I ever shot on this documentary was that. And she went to prison, and so over the next 2 years, I visited her, and I had already reached out to the Johnsons, and they expressed openness to talking and meeting, and I met with them first in public, at restaurants, and then at their house. And it was a few years before I ever brought a camera along for anybody, and so it was during that period that I was able to kind of really dive into all the research and get myself up to speed on how I was going to tackle this thing, which is so complicated and amazing. The story's, just endlessly fascinating, and it stayed that way for me through the final days of the edit. Just always unlocking new questions and new things that I was discovering. But I would say to your question about it was about 2 years that I spent, at least 2 years, just trust building and not bringing any camera to the table.
And what was their reaction, or did they know from the beginning, the Johnsons, that you would also be interviewing Anna and showing her sort of side of the story? Did they express any trepidation about that, or?
Yeah, I mean, I think that I was very transparent right away. I said this would be a 360-degree story, that I wasn't, coming in to sort of like take a side and like hit a home run for anybody, that I really wanted to, bring the kind of curiosity that I had and that the audience would have and that they had. It was kind of their journey in the end. It was sort of the POV of tracking. John comes to Anna, right, to ask her to help him. And so in a way, we're kind of tracking the journey and the arc that he went on, which is just happens to sort of be similar to the arc in the film that the audience goes on. And so I was very transparent about that. But I said, I couldn't make this without her. I not only could I didn't want to make it without everybody, I wouldn't be able to sell it. So it was like, if we wanted to do this thing together, then we would have to all be in it for the same reasons, So I just let them process that and think about it and come to what I think is, their own feeling of wanting to do it in spite of all that, knowing that they might be able to tell a story that was more nuanced, something that might have gotten lost in the courtroom as they were being coached by the various legal teams who are there to build a case and not necessarily to create a cathartic conversation about a sensitive subject like this. So I think everybody thought there was things that they still had to say and process. And I really do believe documentary, when done thoughtfully and patiently, is a great way for people to do that. And I think they latched onto it for that reason.
Yeah, and it's magnificently done, because you feel sympathy for everyone, you feel understanding, but sorrow too for everyone involved, and also, a mixture of a whole lot of emotions, some anger and flabbergast and all that, but you managed to connect the viewer with everyone involved. And from that level, it's kind of interesting because, you know, traditionally in true crime, a victim and a perpetrator kind of thing, but it's the film is so it's an ethical quagmire in many ways. Even legally, I mean, she was sent to prison, but then appealed, and they overturned that because of the lack of evidence or whatnot from the original trial.
Yeah.
So, do you view this as victim and perpetrator? Is Anna a rapist, or is that too simplistic a way to look at this?
You know, I don't think it's simplistic. I think some people will view it that way, and I think, you know, I think that's okay. But the way I see it as a tragedy, right? First and foremost, and in the strictest sense, meaning I don't know if it could have ended up any other way because of the specifics, for example, of the way Anna was raised. She's not just some professor, right? She was a professor that was raised in a world of being surrounded by people with various disabilities, right? And that's an experience that most of us don't have. So there's a curiosity about that, and I was always curious, you know, how does that affect the way that you view people, right? Like she sees people in a different way, which is part of what is intriguing about her character at first, right? And she's able to see things. And like Deva says, the woman from Berkeley who says, you know, she can listen to what I'm actually saying, you know, not what she thinks I'm saying or not what she wants me to be saying. She can just sit there and drain everything out of her brain, she says, and listen to what I really say. And that is, no matter what you think of it, a kind of a special ability that I think I heard from more than one person, right? And so I bring that up because I think that everyone had such particular experiences that brought him to this moment in time where John approached her in class, right? And they began working together, and the intentions might have started, I think, you know, good even, right? I think everybody might have had shared intentions as to what they wanted from the experience. And there were other forces at play, clearly, that sort of warped the story and morphed it into this, what would become a tragedy for everybody, I think. And so I see it as, you know, the characters kind of became enmeshed and entangled in a tragedy that was almost bigger than them. So that's the way I view it very much. I also view it as a psychological mystery first and foremost. So beyond, it's sort of a psychological mystery for me in a true crime packaging, right? And the mystery is, what did Derrick experience, right? And I had consultants in the disability community who were always sort of probing and reminding me that was really what was at the heart, that was the beating heart of the film, was what did he experience? And that goes beyond what you think of facilitated communication. It goes beyond of the ethics of power that are there. It goes beyond all the other questions, because what he actually is thinking and feeling, and how he experienced this 2-year period, including the, you know, the sort of culmination, the sort of, you know, where it became sexualized, is a mystery. And I think that's what really is at the heart. And I think that for me is what I want people to be thinking about afterwards. I want them to be thinking about Derrick, you know, and how can we know more about Derrick, and what questions do we even need to be asking to find out more? And then you get into what technologies do we need, and what are the appropriate technologies and what are not, right? And how do we protect him without overprotecting him? And how does what does self-determination look like for somebody like him? And all of these questions, which I'm not sure people are asking on a regular basis. And I hope that this film can inspire people to ask, you know. So it's a mystery for me, first and foremost, that I think is confronting and interesting.
Yeah, I love the way you put that. It's haunting isn't even the right word. It just taps into something like a leaky faucet for days afterward. You're
Yeah.
thinking new things with each drop. Um, we wrote something because the top two movies on Netflix right now are yours and 50 Shades of Grey. And we thought that was kind of interesting because they're so utterly different.
Yeah.
Yours is brilliant, 50 Shades is 50 Shades, but they're both kind of about communication and contracts, consent and sex. And I'm curious, after making this movie, what do you think about how sort of Hollywood portrays consent in general, also disability, which isn't related to 50 Shades, but
Yeah.
consent and disability in Hollywood these days?
Well, I mean, it's a complex question. The way that I kind of like to answer it is I like the comparison to the fiction movies just in general, because I think that what people can fiction movies seem to me to have an easier time getting away with ambiguous, nuanced, territory that's what I like to watch when I see a fiction film. I like when it sort of forces me to think and be disturbed, but also, challenged. And, documentaries don't do that as much. It's not to say there isn't a place for like very clear journalism that just gets to the investigative, heart of the story and all this, but I really did want to make something that didn't fictionalize anything, but that resembled the relationship to the audience that fiction films are able to have, where you present something that is compelling and not agenda driven, right? I mean, that's not something that tells you here's how you're supposed to feel, but that presents you with something that's just so inherently compelling that you leave the theater thinking and feeling so many things, right? So I that's what I really feel the most excited about and proud of. I think that's the way people are experiencing this film. So in terms of the way, Hollywood, I mean, I'm trying to think of other examples. 50 Shades of Grey, I have to confess I did not see, so I can't comment on that. But I'm trying to think about it. I think it's been done brilliantly, and I think it's been done terribly. I think it sort of depends on the film. I mean, the two films that stick out to me this last year that were made by women, After Sun and Cillian Song's film, which now I'm blanking on the name, but
Past lives.
right, Past Lives, which both dealt with in very different ways longing, right, and desire in very different ways, but they were so exceptionally beautiful, and so completely in another wheelhouse than The English Patient or and so I just think I don't think there's like a way that Hollywood necessarily deals with these questions, but I think that I don't know if any film I can think of has dealt with the subject matter that my documentary has dealt with, right? Which has so many layers of colliding subject matter, right? That the answer to that question is made so difficult, right? What is consent, and what is self-determination, and what is vulnerability, and what is power in this case? And I'm trying to think of another film that has done that. Are you thinking of one in particular, or are you just sort of asking because I'd love to see it?
Yeah, no, I'll try to think of something instead of long. I'm it's such a tragic irony that Anna's devotion academically was to sort of intersectional ways of thinking about these things, and that, the most memorable legacy of her will be this, and in many ways. At this point, who knows about the future? It's a sad irony. Did you
Yeah.
get any feedback from her? What she thought about the film, either good or bad?
Yeah, I did. I screened with both. I screened with everybody. And when I screened with her, everyone's they didn't know what to expect, right? Like, you have no idea how this thing is gonna come together. You've just known you've been a part of this crazy project for 5 years, and all of a sudden you're watching this. So it's a kind of a moment of we see the film. I leave them alone for 15, 20 minutes to discuss, because they, you know, she was watching it with family members, and we came back and discussed it at length. And I think what everybody said was that they felt that it was incredibly accurate, right? That there was nothing that was misrepresented about what happened. I think she felt that the love story that she feels she experienced was presented accurately. And I use my words very carefully there. And I think that she felt that, you know, there's an inescapable reality, which is that she was born into a family that were advocates in the disability community. Her mother was this huge figure of, you know, helping to sort of close down very abusive institutions in the 70s and 80s, right? So she'd grown up with that kind of advocacy, activist mentality. And so one of the other reasons why she told me she was doing the film was to help raise these issues, right? And so I think she felt that was something the film was successful at, was that it was putting nonverbal people on the screen, which doesn't happen, and asking people to think about things. Those are her words. I don't want to say too much, put words in her mouth, but I know that was something she expressed many times and felt was successful about the movie. There were things she wished were, I think, more of a home run for her, and, you know, more sort of in support of her, but she understood that that wasn't a movie I was making. I was trying to do something that was kind of a presentation of what had happened in as elegant and kind of thought-provoking way as possible, you know, and that people would come down on all sides of it.
Excellent. It's a great work. Did Netflix ever ask to make it a mini series or anything, like 3 parts, or were they?
No, no.
I'm sorry, you did this for Sky long before Netflix and all that, and sorry about that.
I had originally wanted to know, I originally wanted to make it into, my pitch was a 3-part series initially.
Okay.
There's just so much there to unpack, you know, and that's one of those things where it's just a lot more money. And same time, we all kind of at the end of the day felt that it would work really well as a kind of a riveting feature, like at that length. I think they originally wanted me to do like 85 minutes. So the first cut I presented to Sky was, you know, something like 2 hours and 20 minutes or something like that. But I think that when it came, it felt just like a very riveting, you know, hour and 40 minutes that had left people wanting more. And I think we all came to the sort of feeling that was exciting. You know?
Yeah, no, I completely agree. Well, thank you so much for discussing it. I'm so glad it's doing well. Was that a big surprise, or were you, I mean, you knew what you'd created was good, but were you surprised that people like would latch onto it this way?
I was. I know everybody always says that. They're like, I can't believe that, you know, but what I did know is I knew it had mainstream appeal, and I didn't make it in order to have mainstream appeal, but I did feel very strongly that, first of all, I don't like watching boring movies, right? I like things to be entertaining and riveting, and if there's a moment that drags the film, it gets cut. That's just how, you know, that's the kind of filmmaker that I am and aspire to be. So I felt that it would have appeal for a range of people who sometimes will just come to it to be on the edge of their seat, you know, and other times will come to it to think and go research. And, you know, I always believed it was for every walk of life, but I never imagined that it would actually get the kind of viewership that it has. And that's really the kind of beauty of a Netflix, is that everybody has it, you know, and their algorithms allow for this kind of a film to do well. And I really am so grateful, you know, to them for that. And it's very exciting. Yeah, really.
Awesome. Yeah, I think I read in a Deadline interview with you and some others, Louis Theroux, they asked, you know, they refer to it as not a commercial project, and he was adamant, no, I think people want to see this. You know, and he was exactly right.
I say in every interview that I think the audience is so much smarter than sometimes people, they're so savvy. They've watched so many documentaries. They know where it's going before you do. You're making things for a very, very open, smart, and ravenously interested audience right now for documentaries. So it's a really exciting time, and I want to be generous and respectful to them because of that, also.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, hopefully it's not another 6 years before your next one, but
Yeah,
you,
exactly.
I know, yeah, I hope we can discuss it when it comes out. But in the meantime, congratulations, really great achievement here.
Thank you. Thanks so much. Thanks for having me.